Bubba was my best good friend. And even I know that ain't something you can find just around the corner.
Welcome back to another session of Captain's Counseling Corner. This is video number 7 in the series, and we have come to the end of the journey of friendships broken, why we no longer have friends. And this being video number 7, 7 is kind of the perfect number, so this is a great way to kind of wrap up our journey and kind of end it on a hopefully good and provocative note. Because so far we have talked about in this series, the beginning we talked about some misconceptions of friendship, how people I think consciously and subconsciously kind of avoid having to go down this risky route between acquaintance and friends. And then we got into basically defining what friendship is, and then ultimately what you need to do to have a friendship. And we talked about 3 things specifically, which if you watch the past videos are talked about in depth. The first one is proximity, which to have the other 2, you must first establish proximity. And then in number 2, we had vulnerability. And in my opinion, vulnerability is probably the most difficult of the 3 to continually grasp and continually bring about in your relationship on a consistent basis. And then number 3 was accountability. So those 3 things basically are the summary of how you get a friendship. But it still doesn't answer the question of how you get a friendship, because those are 3 things that you need to have a friendship, in my opinion. And if you don't have those 3 things, then I think you don't have a friendship. You would have what I call an acquaintance. So how do we come to understand how we are friends, or how to develop this kind of friendship if you don't have these types of friends? Now, as a confession, I, at this very moment, don't have any friends. In actuality, I haven't had friends since I've lived in Korea. The last time I had friends was before I came to Korea, and I was living in Denver, Colorado.
Yes. What? You don't say.
So basically, I'm in the same position as everybody else that's maybe listening to this that doesn't have friends as well. And so the question really becomes, if this is what you want, that's a big if. If this is what you want in your life and you've watched the videos so far, there's got to be some sort of interest. And there's got to be something missing that you're starting to catch on to. Because I think most people can go through their lives without ever coming to the realization that this is something that not only they want, that's something that they need. Because everything is fulfilled, not fulfilled in reality, but fulfilled to distract us from actually asking these kinds of questions and actually getting to the bottom of these kinds of circumstances. So if you're here this far, it really becomes, how do we create this kind of friendship, this kind of life where you finally get to be connected to another person as a friend? And that's what we're going to talk about now.
Yeah, I figured I'm just gonna put my money back on the table and see what kind of cards I get.
Like most things in life, the concept itself is not really difficult. It's actually putting into practice the easy concept. So if you want these kinds of friendships in your life, these kinds of connections, these kinds of relationships, it really comes down to one simple thing, and that is being intentional. You have to be intentional and you have to be proactive about creating these kinds of relationships in your life. They are rare. They don't happen. By definition, we live in the first level questions. We live in the acquaintance because they're the easy fruit. So these other second level questions or second level relationships that have deeper connection are something that you have to work for. That's what we've been establishing this whole time from the beginning of the videos. So this is not something that is just going to fall into your lap. This is something that you have to proactively create in your life. And how do you do that? Well, it comes down to just simply first expressing yourself. For all of those people that have kind of been on the outskirts of your life, they're somewhat connected, they fall into the acquaintance category, but they're not deeply connected in some way. Well, find those people that you feel like you want to, maybe eliminate the people you don't feel like you want that kind of connection with, and then take the people that you feel like you do want that kind of connection with and be proactive. Say something to them. I cannot tell you how much going throughout my life, and I'm kind of on the outlier scale. I tend to be very direct. I tend to tell people exactly how I feel most of the time. And it is very rare. I can't even really recall any memories of another person saying to me very directly, hey, I really love our friendship and I don't know exactly what that means or what it means for the future, but I just love our friendship and I want to take it deeper and I hope that we hang out more, maybe take the initiation to call them up twice, 3 times a week instead of maybe once a month. Start taking steps to create that proximity, take steps to create that vulnerability, take steps to create the accountability. Those things require your initiation. Most people are lazy and they just sit back and wait for it to fall in their lap. It is not going to happen in this case. If me and you are both being proactive about creating this connection, it will happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to be because by our proactive responses, we may find out that we're not a match. Just like you do in the dating world. Maybe as you meet someone and you go on a few dates, maybe you date for a couple months and you're like, yeah, this is not going to work out. That can happen with friendships too. I think that dating relationships, and I've said this before, and friendships have the exact same parallels without the romance sexual part. So just like in a dating world, it doesn't mean like you have to commit to somebody right away. But after you get to know them and you're working it out and you're trying to hang out, proximity, vulnerability, and accountability builds trust. And as it builds trust, then you can build that deeper connection. But it's not going to happen if you are not proactive. It's not going to happen if I am not proactive in seeking this out. And I will say 90% of most people don't take the time to put their cards back on the table or to put their cards on the table at all, maybe for the first time, and develop these kinds of relationships.
You know what? I'm afraid too. Fuck it, I want to give it a shot, and at least I'm honest with you.
Now, you can know everything in the world, sport, but the only way you're finding out that one is by giving it a shot.
What's interesting is that this is just the beginning. To kind of put it into a perspective for you, the goal in life is not just to get 1 or 2 of these close friends or these kinds of connected relationships that go beyond the acquaintance surface relationships that most of us already have. That's not the goal. The goal is to actually surround yourself with a community of close relationship connections that go beyond the surface. And that is a whole different ball of wax that we could talk about for hours.
How I love my hippie life. What a far out trip.
No, we're not talking about the hippie life or some cult or some sex orgy group that gets together, which is usually the misconception that happens when you even mention the word commune or community or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. What I am talking about, although I do think the hippies have the right direction, I just think they go too far off the beaten path. But when you do have a group of people that you would develop these close connections with in a group of 10 or a group of 20, then that's really the sweet spot of how people can work together, whether it's guy-girl or guy-guy, if you get a group of men that can do this. And when you share in each other's lives in a connected sort of way, and you have proximity, and you have vulnerability, and you have accountability, this is where the truly fulfilled life actually happens. With great risk comes great reward. So it is going to be difficult. It is going to be hard. But let's start at the beginning, where you can just start to develop and initiate and be proactive with a few people. And then if that eventually turns into a group of people, that's even better. And that is actually going to be what the next series of videos are going to be about, is how we take this one concept of deeper second level relationships and turning it into a family of relationships where it's basically a family that is non-blood, and that all the things that come along with that, which is obviously very difficult. There's a lot of roads that you can travel down and things that you need to define and things that you need to talk about going down that rabbit hole, which we are not going to do in this video. But that is going to be coming in the future if this is actually something that people are interested in, and we can just hopefully start here with these first set and first series of videos talking about what it means to have an actual connected relationship with some people, like a few people, and then eventually understanding how that can turn into a group of people. But that is something that we will talk about in the next series of videos. So what I want to do to kind of wrap up this series of videos is to have you comment down below in the comment section any questions you may have about anything that was discussed or talked about in these 7 videos about creating or developing or continuing an actual friendship versus these first level question relationships that are on the surface, which we call acquaintances. So I'd be interested if we get enough questions down below. It may take a couple days, it may take a couple months, depending if there's any interest whatsoever. And once there's enough questions, then I will take some time in a video to try to address those questions and try to give more fleshed out answers, because the goal of this series of videos was basically to try to, in a compact way, get the idea out so that people can take the initiative on their own, take the intentional living on their own, and flesh those out the way they see fit. But I'm sure there's lots of questions, there's a lot of maybe some misunderstandings, and that is where I would like you to comment below. And then eventually, if there's enough questions, I will create a video answering those questions as best as I can. And hopefully in a later date, we'll get to a second series of how this turns into a group of people working together in a situation of deep, deep connection and relationships. So until then, this has been a fun journey, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say and your reactions. As always, like and subscribe, and we will see you in the future. This is your captain saying, peace out.